Hey, welcome to Kitchen Tricks and Other Positions, and today we're going to talk about kitchen hacks and food tips. These are things that I have learned over time. These are things that I picked up in different restaurants, and some from just trial and error. Sometimes I've learned from looking at something and thinking, maybe I shouldn't do it that way, and then I did it anyway, and then learned from my mistakes. So I'm going to go through and tell you a few things that helped me in my journey to help you become a better cook, a better baker, and just do things more efficiently. Let's get started. Invest in a kitchen scale. I know there's going to be a lot of, do I really need that? I don't want to buy that. Yes, you do need a kitchen scale. Measuring cups for the casual baker are not a consistent and exact form of measurement. People fill the vessels differently, and depending on what the vessels are made out of, whether they're plastic or metal, they can warp. Using a kitchen scale for either savory baking or pastry is going to ensure that whatever you make is going to come out the exact same way every single time. Just please invest in a kitchen scale and you will be so grateful that you did. One of the first things I learned in pastry school was to put a wet paper towel on the counter and place my cutting board on top of that. What that's going to do is it's going to create a sort of suction with your cutting board, and it's going to stop it from moving around and sliding around. So if you have a really sharp knife or a dull knife, which usually causes more injuries, it'll stop that from happening, and it'll stay in one spot and you won't have to worry about it shifting on you. Use aged egg whites, and that can be just from 2 to 3 days or even longer, a few weeks.
Maybe not that old.
What that's going to do, this can be kind of hard to plan for if you aren't like a regular baker, or for some reason you just aren't in the habit of saving egg whites. But the next time you make something where you're using just yolks, and you save all of those whites, because you can use those, they will whip up better than fresh egg whites, and that comes from the moisture evaporating from the egg white. Repurpose all of your vanilla beans. Those are not a one and done type of thing. A lot of people will take their vanilla pods and they'll scrape out the seeds and they'll add them to whatever they're making, and whether it be an ice cream base or a cake, and then they'll just discard the pod. Or if they're infusing that into a base, once that's done, they'll throw away the pod. But you can rinse that off and reuse it. You can throw it into a bunch of sugar. I like to create my own vanilla extract. I have one going since, it's been over 10 years now. I take every vanilla bean I've ever used, I rinse it, I clean it, I throw it in a bottle and fill it up with usually vodka, and I let that extract. It usually will stop extracting in about 6 months, and at that point, if the bottle is too full, I'll take out all the beans and then replace them with fresh beans. Vanilla beans are way too expensive to just use once and throw away. Get as much out of it as you can. Age your dough and your batter. This is something that will make a tremendous difference in not only the texture, but also the flavor of your product. I would say there's 2 items specifically where it's kind of like a non-negotiable, which is either an ice cream base and a cookie dough. Those 2 things are going to benefit significantly from aging. When it comes to something like cookie dough, aging your batter can make a big difference because the dry ingredients have more time to fully hydrate, and the proteins in the flour can relax, and that is going to create a more consistent texture and a more tender cookie. It also gives time for the fats to solidify, so therefore when they're chilled and you throw it into the oven to bake, the fats are going to melt slower. It's going to decrease the spread of your cookie, so that's something you can have a little bit more control over. Use your freezer. The freezer is not something to ignore. A lot of people just think it's there to store frozen ingredients and pints of ice cream, which yes, of course it is. But the best thing that you can do is it helps with your prep, and it also helps keeps things really fresh. Back in my bakery days, I used to pipe out a ton of choux pastry on sheet trays, and I would throw those in the freezer, and then I would pull them out to bake them as needed. And the same thing can be with cookie dough as well. You can portion all of your cookie dough, freeze that, and then bake them off as needed. One thing I found with freezing is that freezing fully baked cakes that are unassembled actually makes them more tender and more moist. It locks in a lot of that moisture. Cakes really benefit from being frozen briefly. Not like a fully frozen cake that's fully frosted and everything, like some bakeries I used to work at. Gross. Don't even get me started on their chocolate mango cake. Rolling dough between 2 sheets of parchment can really help if you have a really sticky or soft or wet dough. A lot of times when you start to roll it out, it's going to start to stick. One thing that you can do is, instead of rolling it just on a countertop with a little bit of flour, you can put down a sheet of parchment, lightly flour that, place another sheet of parchment on top of that, and then roll on top of that. So what that's going to do is that's going to prevent that from sticking, and then if you kind of reach the end of what you think you can roll out, all you have to do is flip the whole thing over, carefully peel the parchment off, and start all over again. Flour it if you need to, place the parchment back on top, and continue rolling. It's going to make rolling out so much smoother. Don't be afraid of salt. Salt is very important. Salt is seasoning. Salt is necessary. A lot of American desserts are way too sweet and they are under-seasoned. The level of salt depends on what kind of salt you're using. Different salts have different levels of salinity. There are also different shapes and they also dissolve differently. If you use a teaspoon of table salt and a teaspoon of kosher salt, that saltiness is going to be very different. But add more salt than you think you need. A quarter of a teaspoon is not enough, in my opinion, for most things. This one functions much like the wet paper towel cutting board situation. If you're finding that you're mixing something in a large bowl or whisking something, which tends to move the bowl quite a bit, make a ring with a towel. It doesn't have to be wet, but it helps. And make a sort of donut shape, place the bowl on top of that, and continue whisking, and the bowl isn't going to move around on you. Read a recipe from start to finish before you begin anything. I can't tell you how many times I've started a recipe, gotten halfway through, only to realize something is missing or something is wrong, and there's no way of fixing it.
Thanks for watching part 1 of Kitchen and Food Hacks to help make you a better baker. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for part 2. And if you want, go ahead and leave a comment telling me if you learned something. I also accept other compliments. Oh, and hey, did you know I also wrote a few books? I'll just leave this here. Okay, bye.